Much for joining our show each week, all our listeners, both here in Indianapolis and across the country. Today, we have our superstar panel with attorney Vanita Banks, a master's in tax and also cybersecurity expert, credit research analyst, and attorney Milton, LA, California, famous representative the Rodney King case. But today, I start off with a story that's been in the news that most people have not paid a lot of attention to. That is the Silicon Valley Bank collapse. And there was a second bank, Signature Bank of New York, and the Bank of New York had about 150 billion in assets, and Silicon Valley had about 250 billion in assets. And essentially, what happened is when the interest rates were low, as you recall, the regulation down to 0% during the pandemic. So interest rates were like 2-3%. So if you during the pandemic, if you bought a house, your interest rate was like 3%. And so when the interest rates were low, the banks gamble and they decide to invest in long-term treasury, which was paying 4.5%. So in order to get ahead of the game and make extra money, now the reason this investment situation is important is that the banks have to have enough money to satisfy their customers. So if they had 250 billion, if they needed 100 billion to deal with transactional matter, they have to keep the money in their pocket, in other words. But they invested in money, and the money they invested in the bonds, the bond market collapsed. So the interest rate went from about 0%, I think it's up to about 6 or 7 now. I didn't check what it was today. And the net result is they lost a substantial amount of money on these investments. And somehow the depositors, the customers found out about it, and they all tried to get their money out of the bank at the same time. And of course, the bank didn't have the money to produce. The federal government has to rush in. But the reason I'm telling you this is that deposits are insured by the federal government, FDIC, up to $250,000. This is very important. So if you're fortunate enough to have more than $250,000 into your bank account, it's a good idea to open up a second account at the bank and keep it under the 250, because the federal government insures it, because all banks pay into this fund and in order to pay customers out if there's a bank failure. So just keep that in mind. But the reason this was significant, if the federal government don't bail them out, then we could have a mass run on all banks, and all of a sudden we go into a depression. It's just a fickle type thing that most people didn't realize. They were teetering on the brink of disaster. But fortunately, the Biden administration acted very quickly, and that averted this catastrophic loss of our national economy. But it had to do with the fact that the regulation on bank was revised under the Trump administration. They took off these fundamental stress test requirement to have the bank to have so much liquidity. And when they loosened those requirements, banks could invest more often in other things. Like, for example, if you were fortunate enough, say you won the lottery for $1 million and you decided to get ahead of the game, say a few years ago, and then everybody was talking about cryptocurrency, right? And so you decided, instead of putting your money into a traditional investment, you said, oh, hell, cryptocurrency is going to be the thing that make me filthy rich. So you decide to invest your money into the cryptocurrency. And 2 years later, that collapsed, and all of a sudden your $1 million goes down to 100,000 or less. Well, that's the type of thing that the banking regulation prohibited banks from doing. But that's exactly what these banks did. They decided to invest into a process, a long-term investment they thought would pay off more so than the national economy interest rates. And they made a terrible mistake. And they took the money out of the bank and invested in these other investments, and investments failed. Now, if the government did not intervene, folks, our entire national economy would have collapsed. So keep that in mind. Okay, having said that, we have a call. One, you have a question to come in for legal issues today, sir. Hello, Juan. You have a question to come in for us today, sir.
Hello?
Juan, you have a question to come in for us today. Go ahead.
A little bit of both. Um, the topic is going to be interesting, but I don't think it's going to apply to 99% of the people who listen to the show, including myself, because I ain't got no money either. My concern
Actually,
is
Juan, let me explain. It does apply to you. Here's why. If the banks fail, they don't want to just affect rich people, they affect middle income and poor folks. See, everybody uses the banking system to get loans, to pay for things, to buy homes, buy cars. So if the banking system fails, the credit lines freeze it up. And so you can't get money to buy a car, can't get money to buy a home, can't get money to put your kids in college. In other words, that part applies to you more so than rich folks, believe it or not, because it affects credit lines. That makes sense?
I apologize for being wrong. You are right. My concern is this. Too often, and first let me clarify, I know there is racism. I am a black man. You know I am a black man because I lifted or Ubered you before. But anyway, that's not the point. My point is I want to encourage black people to do the best that they can in an uneven racist system because you can. I often fear that too often black people are led to believe that they can't get ahead because of racism. Yes, you can. I know that because as I listen to the show, you guys are lawyers. You have matriculated up the economic scale. However, a lot of black people don't seem to want to believe that they can get ahead. They don't seem to know that Steve Harvey was homeless for 3 years. They spend more time on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter than they do with Les Brown. And if we all know Les Brown, we know we can get ahead if we put our effort into doing what we need to do. I'm one of those people who believes if you live in this life, if you learn how to play the game, you should learn how to play the game and then play the hell out of this game. Apply yourself, apply yourself, apply yourself. Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. Damn the racism, full speed ahead. Learn how to apply yourself and then apply yourself. Play this game called life. Get ahead. Make a life for your children and your children's children. I believe that can be done if you put some effort into how you live your life. I want to encourage you and everyone else to do well in this life. I want you to be blessed, but that means put effort into your life in this uneven playing field that we live on.
Well, thank you very much for your words of encouragement, Juan. Thank you very much. Now, we have a couple more callers, but on the subject, then we're going to switch over to a topic that Attorney Banks is going to start off with in a second. Okay, we'll take a quick caller. Caller, you have a question for us?
This is Pierre. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I saw your note. You was talking about Kevin McCarthy, a lot of hard for that. Well, it's not regulation, it's deregulation. You know?
Yeah, deregulation.
Yeah, they took away the safety net in terms of investment, which was a dumb idea. But
right. Yeah, thank you for taking my call, Nate, and congratulations on that article or being recognized as, in the legal paper. Here's another example of the Democrats not, in my opinion, capitalizing on this politically because of the Trump regulation or deregulation. Like you said, they were almost crashed the economy again, and that was there were two California banks, Silicon Valley Bank and First Republic, San Francisco. Out of San Francisco, I'd see if Milton can comment about that. But here's another opportunity. The Republicans couldn't wait to say Biden bank run or or something stupid like that. But once again, we're not telling the people, or in my opinion, it's not being communicated or messaged properly that, hey, had it been up to Donald Trump, this economy would have crashed again. And the only one making the point that I could see was Elizabeth Warren. But thank you for taking my call, Nate, and hopefully
Hey,
you'll
Pierre,
talk
thank you
about.
very much. That's an accurate resuscitation of what happened. You're 100% correct. The Trump administration, they did the deregulations and they took back the investment and stress test. In other words, the banks didn't have so much money for their customers and they loosened the requirements and look what we got. And now you're correct. The same people that voted for this deregulation because they got bought and paid out by the lobbyists, now they're trying to blame somebody else. It's shameful. But I agree with you. But thank you very much for bringing it out, Pierre. Now, Imhotep, you had a question or comment for us today, sir.
How you doing, Brother Nate?
How you doing today,
I don't know if you have Attorney Banks or Attorney Grimes, but I'll say hello to them too if you do.
They're on the line. Yes.
All right. Hello. Legally speaking here, and I guess we should talk about some legal subjects because what disturbs me is that we have a King said, Martin Luther King, late Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I'm going to repeat that for everybody who thinks that Black folks should just overlook the structural problems in the society, put our head down, because I think I'm pretty successful. My mother's an attorney. I got sister's attorney. That don't matter. They still fighting the frame. They're still fighting this frame. We have lawsuits up the wazoo being filed every day from structural racism in the banking industry, in the mortgage industry, in the healthcare industry. We watched a Black doctor in Carmel at a particular hospital here. You know about it, Nate, maybe you too, Attorney Banks and Grimes, cry on Facebook and Instagram that she was not being treated during the inceptions of the COVID crisis. And she died. She died. Not a, which no one to me is less because I come from the grounds. No one is less. But we're talking about on the esteemed ladder, a doctor, lawyer, nurse, teacher, all that is at the top of the esteemed ladder. And she was treated like garbage. That's not nothing we put our heads in the sand to and say, yes, we should just forget about it and don't worry about the torpedoes and don't look at the racism. And no, we fight. You all are fighters. You all, lawyers by trade, argue and fight. My mother has fought for almost 50 years fighting. That is disingenuous to say that Black people make any excuses. We have strived and made efforts in spite of this structural racism, which Pierre just highlighted with the other banks. And you're right. It all affects us because in the crash of '08, because a lot of folks online are trying to attribute bailouts to President Obama. No, TARP was signed. I think this needs to be pointed out. TARP was signed by President Bush. But the point of the matter is, I played golf with a gentleman up there at the golf course in Zionsville, a pediatrician. We were walking the course, and he told me he lost $500,000 from his 401k after the crash of '08. So it does affect everyone. This is the winds of '08 and '09 are right here. And the deregulations from Trump, along with what happened in Ohio with the railroad industry, now they're filing lawsuits. People are getting sick from the dirt and from the poison. And also, Nate, talk about the stuff coming to Putnam County. The people there are upset that they're bringing that poison dirt to Putnam County. Now they're going to be filing lawsuits. We have lawsuits. I don't understand how people can sit up here and think that the courts are not filled with people who are trying to petition for redress from egregious behavior that's still going on here. You can't stick your head in the sand. Jobs. Let me know when a white rich person or a white person goes to a bank to withdraw money out of their own account, like the brother did down in Atlanta, and then he gets the police call on him on withdrawing money out of his own account. I don't see that happening to white people. I don't see a Black doctor in Houston going to cash her check after coming out of residency, $14,000, and then they call the police on him. She filed a lawsuit against Chase. I don't see that happening to white people. So I don't want to hear this stick your head in the ground and just obliviate and overlook these structural problems. We fight. We file these lawsuits. We take them to court like you all have seen for your careers, and we continue to fight because if it wasn't for the judicial system, we wouldn't have the gains we have now, going back to Thurgood Marshall, Brown versus Board, you name it, Loving versus Virginia. I can rattle them all off. I've studied and learned them. So I don't want to hear that crap. We fight. We don't turn our heads and just take the torpedoes. That's insane. Thanks for taking my call.
Okay. Okay, hey, Attorney Banks, I tell you, our audience are fired up today, but there's so many different subjects we have to cover today. So we'll close out on that one because there's a lot of other issues that are going on. And you made a good point. And there are so many, but inconsistent what he's talking about. And I know I want to talk about the Texas abortion pill case, but what's consistent with this conversation is the Michael Irvin video. I don't know how many people have seen that. The whole thing to me was insane. During the Super Bowl, Michael Irvin, of course, was part of the Super Bowl telecast. And the Super Bowl is the highest rated show of anything we do on TV. It's seen worldwide. And so tickets, I think, as the game this year was between $1,000 and $2,000 for a simple admission. And so Michael Irvin was part of the telecast, and he got canned because a employee of the Marriott Hotel there in Phoenix made an allegation that he had sexually assaulted her in the lobby. They did the video tape. I saw the videotape, and just was a simple encounter that lasted about a minute or so that didn't seem anything unusual because the time they were talking, there were people going by on both directions. So, and he filed a $100 million lawsuit in Texas. And that suit, of course, had to be dismissed based on the fact that Marriott said that this was an independently owned hotel. So then he had to dismiss it without prejudice in Texas and then refile it in Phoenix in that federal court based on the fact that the Marriott is located in that state. So that's a quick overview of what happened. And I know that the Attorney Banks, did you have an opportunity to look at that video also?
I did, Attorney Lee, and good morning, Attorney Grimes.
Good morning.
Yes, I did view the video, which has no audio, by the way, but this interaction that Michael Irvin had with this Marriott employee lasts less than 2 minutes. And it just appears that he and she were greeting each other in or near the lobby of the hotel, it appears. And following this exchange, she alleged that he was, quote, visibly intoxicated, which doesn't appear so from the video, and that she was, quote, made uncomfortable. And so this reminds me, of the many, quote, Karens in the world that we've seen, as well as dog whistles dating back to, Emmett Till, whenever a Black man looks at, a white woman, potentially they can be subject to this type of action, which of course, has potential to, and already did, cause damage to his reputation and his name.
Well, what was critical for me is that the Marriott Hotel refused to release the videotape right away. And what I didn't understand about that, Milton, maybe you have some insight, instead of them contacting the police if they thought there was misconduct, they contacted NFL and had their own security people evict them out in the middle of the night, right? So if they thought it was a crime, why didn't they report to law enforcement people for investigation and turn over the video to them? But instead they contacted NFL without sending NFL the video, what happened? So based on these false allegations, well, allegedly false allegation, they canned Michael Irvin, and I didn't understand that at all. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. Your career is hanging in the balance of an allegation that was captured on video that clearly shows that it was not a sexual assault as alleged. I don't get that. I think that hopefully you get justice and accountability for what happened.
Yeah, when I look at the video, it doesn't show anything close to sexual assault. From my view, you don't have any audio, and just the visual watching of it and communication between the two. It appears as though they parted ways with amicably, saying goodbye or whatever. The gestures and the mannerisms and the physical manifestation of things do not indicate any type of assault. Maybe it was all verbal. I can't say because I did not hear, but I doubt if it gets past any prosecutor's desk as to being a charged sexual assault. So now civilly, I think she's got a hard case to prove, since he talked to other people before that encounter. I'm sure you see him speaking to people after the encounter. And from what I understand, people who knew him and saw him and talked to him did not say that he was so intoxicated that he did not know what he was doing. So it seems as though the allegation is insufficient to warrant a multi-million-dollar lawsuit by this woman. That's my view on it.
Yeah. Well, we'll kind of track that and see what happened. I suspect that at some point in time, Mara is going to make him a general settlement offer on the case, and the case should get resolved. I don't suspect the case will go to trial, because when you start doing discovery on this matter, the NFL, Mara is going to have to disclose who they called the NFL and what that conversation consisted of. There may be some immunity for reporting of a crime to law enforcement, but I'm not sure when you report to third person. I consider that slander. So you make a false, in this case, the allegation would be a false allegation of criminal misconduct. And so you're falsely accusing somebody of committing a criminal offense. In most states, they call that what slander per se, and it will be actual type slander. So it'll be interesting to see what occurs in that case, because the immunity afforded to most people when they report things to a police officer doesn't apply to ordinary citizens. I can't imagine that you could say that the NFL is a police agency.
It would be very interesting to me to read what this lady has to say occurred and see if it matches up or does not match up with the video. My staff and I we studied a video yesterday of a criminal offense, and the alleged victim is saying that the telephone was put in his face so it could be turned on so that he could speak to his wife, who was being held hostage for a large sum of money. And we see the video of the incident where this phone was supposed to be put to his face, and that's not there. So the video in this case assists us, because the alleged victim is overstating the event, is overstating what happened. So I like to see what she had to say about what happened, because oftentimes a person who's lying forget the mechanics of things, or forget, in this case, that a video of the lobby is possessed by the hotel, and you see the actions of people. And I would just love to see her statement. Did she say he touched her? Did she say he did anything? Did she say she did anything that doesn't comply with the video?
Yeah. Will be interesting. We'll follow that story at a later date. Attorney Banks, the other issue is, I thought you brought up, was the Texas abortion pill case. You got a quick update on that?
Absolutely, Attorney Lee. But first, I wanted to just go back to the banking discussion that we had. Yes. Senator Elizabeth Warren, she's filed legislation, or she's filed a bill, the Secure Viable Banking Act, and it would put big banks with at least $50 billion in assets back under the Federal Reserve oversight and the Dodd-Frank stress test that you mentioned earlier. As a result of deregulation of banks during the Trump administration. And by the way, 17 Democratic senators voted for that deregulation in 2018. Banks with the threshold for greater bank oversight was increased to $250 billion as opposed to $50 billion. And you mentioned that the Silicon Valley Bank was capitalized at $250 billion. So they weren't subject to those greater stress tests. And so again, deregulation of banks, deregulation of the railroad industry, as our caller pointed out, have resulted in these catastrophic consequences that we're seeing across the nation. And with respect to the Texas abortion bill case, a group of anti-abortion advocates, I want to give you the name of the group. They filed a lawsuit in Texas, and they're seeking to reverse the FDA's approval of a abortion drug and remove it from the market. And this medication has been used for over 20 years. And this would be the first time that a court reversed a drug safety determination by the FDA. We know that 53% of abortions are medically induced abortions, and that this is medically induced abortions are the most popular and safest form of abortion in the United States. We also know that 64% of Americans favor reproductive choice. The judge that is presiding over the case is a Trump appointee. And interestingly, and I've never seen this, counselors, he called a secret hearing of the attorneys and required that the hearing that was held just this past Wednesday on the case not be posted on the docket until the day before the hearing. And I've never heard of that. Have you, Attorney Lee or Grimes?
That's a reversal of non-pro-tunc, I guess, but no.
Well, I thought that it's such a controversial thing in the sense that they're saying that it's the public, it's the safety aspect of the judiciary. In other words, in order to protect the judge and the staff from what appears to be another draconian, crazy ruling, they need to have special protection. And so they can put their protection in place and to give people less time to plan something that could be adverse to the administration of justice. But what's interesting about this case is that they're trying to say that the federal agency that approves drugs, look at test results, don't have the jurisdiction. And this whole thing is more critical than just abortion pills. If this judge determined that the federal government can't regulate the safety of administration of judge, and then what the hell do we have this bureaucracy for? What they're going to say that you could introduce any type of drug into? See, it works both ways. If their allegation is that the FDA can't regulate whether or not a drug is safe or unsafe, right? Think how that will work. All these pills and stuff that we get in our body that require scientists to mull years over to study and analyze, to test, to make sure that once we ingest those pills, we don't die, that they do what they're supposed to do. Are they saying that that process itself get thrown out? When I look at that, I would think this is an insane case, because if he ruled that this agency doesn't have this authority, then how do we make our society safe for the ordinary citizen? It's not just about abortion to me. I think it's about human safety. We sue manufacturers now for all kind of pills, but we can't sue them if they get FDA approval. We can only do it on advertisement liability. And that's the only viable way to sue is advertisement. If they don't disclose the adverse effect of any drugs, then you sue them for advertisement liability. You can't sue for manufacturers. You can't sue them, well, not successfully. You can sue for anything, but you're not going to win. But you have to narrow the scope of the suit. Well, and that's why I was concerned about that, Counselor. I just think that if they were to throw this out, where does it end?
Well, it's the politicization of drug safety. And again, this is the first time that a court will rule on a drug approved by the FDA. And this decision may have a broader impact, as you stated, Attorney Lee. And there are 4 other cases filed in federal court. This particular one is filed by the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine, and they're an anti-abortion organization, and they're seeking to reverse the FDA's approval of mifepristone, and they want to remove it from the market. And this medication is used in over 50% of cases across the country. And interesting, one of the arguments is that they're arguing a 1873 anti-obscenity law, it's called the Comstock Act, which prohibits the mailing of any drug used for abortion. And so this ruling may have, again, catastrophic impact.
So if we can't win it by the vote of the people and the will of the people, we'll win it by manipulating the laws that we have to any means necessary to get our way, huh?
Yeah.
Absolutely, Attorney Grimes. This medication is considered medically safe, again, approved by the FDA, and it's used around the world.
The FDA approval has been defense in lawsuits. So I'm surprised that the manufacturer of these drugs and all intervening cases, hey, are you guys nuts? This what protect us. This is how we stay in business. If you say that FDA approval doesn't mean anything, then every time somebody died because of adverse reaction medication, does that mean now we could sue them for that? You know, I mean, I don't. I mean, we sue for products liability. That's one of the things that's going on. You know, you got Johnson & Johnson lawsuit, talcum powder. You have all sorts of lawsuits pending, but they're narrow. They're very narrow in scope. When you watch a commercial on TV of a medical product or a pill, they have this nice person, and then the other half of the commercial will tell you about all the side effects. If you listen, they may give you about 20 side effects of each drug. Now, they camouflage that a lot of time, but we take those when we're doing litigation and they become part of the trial. because, it's instructional. And so if, for example, they say, well, it could do this, could do that, but they don't mention that it could cause cancer, then we can sue them for the, advertising liability type theory, a failure to warn. And so the way drugs are done, a lot of people don't realize is your typical physician don't, they may take one pharmacology course in medical school, but drugs are taught to physicians by pharmaceutical sales rep in the real world, because drugs come out every month, and the pharmaceutical company, they educate physicians. They go to their office, they give them samples, and they give them brochures, try this drug, and that's how the drugs are generally sold now, because they're educating the physician of how the drugs work and the side effect. With products, though, it's even more severe. On a product like they insert the hip replacement and things like that, it's done even more involvement of the manufacturer. Manufacturers actually go to the surgery on a lot of these, like hip implants and things like that. They're installing those into your system. Inside the surgery room, you have the manufacturer rep a lot of times. I've seen records that identify them. So we sue the manufacturer. We want to take the rep deposition too. Now, what the hell are you doing there? You're not a surgeon, but they're in the room when the surgery is done. So having said that, this lawsuit makes no sense to me. I thought about it, Attorney Banks. I'm thinking, they realized, and I saw the lawyer for the government, they were saying it was somebody who upset so many states. I'm thinking it could actually lead to widespread lawsuits against all the manufacturers, new theories of liability.
Very, very interesting, Attorney Lee. The case is already having an impact, in as much as I'm sure you've read that Walgreens has decided not to dispense the medication in several states, including those in which abortions are permitted, like California, Attorney Grimes, where your governor has come out strongly against Walgreens for taking that action.
Mhm.
And these restrictions, and these proposed restrictions, unfortunately, are political and will disproportionately impact African American women, poor women, and women of color.
Okay, let's take a caller. Reverend Phillips, you have a question or comments for us today, sir?
Hey, how you doing, Brother Nathaniel Lee?
Yes, sir.
I was listening to all the callers, and it seemed like to me all these allocations, people know they did somebody wrong, like on their job and in the community, like housing and stuff like that. And when they filed that civil suit, it seemed like to me the other person, they know they did somebody wrong, but they don't want to admit to it. You know, like discrimination, you know, stuff like that. So these people need to be accountable, you know, because they really ain't hurt them. They really is hurting the department, they office space, and I think what it boils down to, these people know they did people wrong, but they know they did it wrong. That's probably why they can't sleep at night. Because their conscience whooping them. And I'll take my comment off there.
Hey, Attorney Grimes, he made an interesting point. But I think he misses something more important. When we file suit against these folks, we're really suing to get paid by their insurance company, and they don't feel any pain.
Right, right. I didn't totally follow his point though.
You know, he was saying that people that are breaking the law and doing things to other folks, they're not being held accountable. And he's right, they're not. You know, but when they file a lawsuit, the lawsuit don't make them change behavior, because the lawsuits that we file, almost in every case, 99% of the time, they're covered by insurance. So we're doing a trial to collect insurance money, and we never collect money from the defendants themselves in civil lawsuits.
I got you. Okay.
Unless they win the lottery or something, but
Same thing as when we sue police departments and cops out here in California. The cops don't pay the damage that the jury award. The people pay that money, or the insurance companies. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the problem though is that in your city, heck, I can't go a week without LA County Sheriff, somebody settling some case or getting losers of a case. I mean,
you just don't particularly care for California. I understand that because we have ideal weather and conditions out here different than Indiana. But yeah, there are a lot of lawsuits, Nate, and then there are going to be a lot of lawsuits until we change the structure again of law enforcement. We keep hiring the same type of individuals, and we expect different results. And you're not going to get different results if you keep bringing in the same uneducated, untrained, and type of people that they typically hire. So it's a vicious cycle. We can change the police chief, we can change this, but if we don't change the culture, we're going to keep having these lawsuits. Supposedly there are about 8 or 10 different gangs, Gangs, like street gangs, in the sheriff department in LA County. And these gangs are terrorizing officers as well as the public. They've been existing for over 30 years. So we got a problem.
so in LA, the sheriff is elected by the people. When he comes into the department, he doesn't have control over the department. He can't clean it out.
Have you seen the power behind police unions, Nate? Hey, come on. I mean, it's hard to deal with. Yeah, they're strong. They're strong. They control the selection of prosecutors by the money they contribute to gangs.
We'll have to have our colleague, John Sweeney, come on to talk about how he exposed those gangs within the LA Sheriff's Department.
The problem is not the exposure of them, Vanita. Yeah, John would be educational for that. It is the eradication of them that has not occurred. And that's the problem.
We saw the same thing in Memphis, Tennessee, and that was African-American officers just beating the hell out of their citizens for no apparent legitimate reason. So this is a systemic problem that permeates probably all the major cities in America. I saw recently in Louisville, Kentucky, the Justice Department said that, I mean, the way they talk about the African-American community and the way they treated them was offensive. And they've gotten away with it for many years. And so I think that it's more than just, you're correct about the leadership, like here locally, the FOP in our prosecutors race. We had the prosecutor on our show one time, Ryan Mears, as you guys recall, and he is a fair-minded prosecutor, try to treat people fairly, but because he was prosecuting cops for beating up citizens and doing misconduct, the FOP endorsed his opponent, right? Well, the person they endorsed had never appeared in a criminal court. Never. She had 3 cases. In our state, you could track cases, lawyer do. So she had done 3 cases in the court system and in her professional career. And 2 were administrative type cases. One was a grand jury that returned no bill of indictment. So they endorsed a person that had 0 experience, 0. And so when you say about how strong the police unions are, I get it.
Yeah,
You know, I agree that I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I was teasing you about your city and your state there, Nate. I used your prosecutor from that interview you had with him last year. I use him as an example when I'm talking about filing charges against officers who have committed a wrongdoing. It doesn't take, like your prosecutor said, the law don't change, the facts don't change, it's the same. It doesn't take 2, 3, 4, 5 years to get enough evidence to take these gentlemen and women to trial. 6 months is sufficient because it's all already there at the beginning, you know? So the delay in prosecuting these officers is ridiculous out here in California.
Well, Attorney Banks certainly has had a lot of that in Chicago also with the police department. I mean, it's just my experience with them has always been just negative in terms of corruption and chronic liars, and that was violating citizen rights rampantly and no accountability. And I'm not sure how that affected the recent mayor race there in Chicago, but in my personal view of cases, a few cases I've done up there, Milton, I thought that the Chicago police was probably one of the worst I've seen in the free world in terms of application of citizen rights and lying about it. And but in any event, Attorney Banks.
Absolutely. And we've seen a lot of high profile settlements here in Chicago as well, dating back many, many years. Of course, this is a systemic and endemic problem across the United States.
Sure. Okay, let's go back to the line. Pierre Pullen, you got a question or comment for us, sir?
Nate, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yeah, I'm breaking the rules on calling in twice, but here's one thing I wanted to bring to you, attorneys' attention. I don't know if you know about it. Black doctors and Black pharmacists across the country who have practices being targeted by the federal government and the Drug Administration, the DEA, to be put out of business. Black radio was the only ones doing that story, and I've heard it on Sirius XM 126, and I heard it out of WAOK. Black pharmacists committing suicide, being destroyed financially. And I just wanted to know if you've ever heard of that. And I haven't heard anybody trying to get them together to do a lawsuit, maybe against the federal government. We had a doctor here in Indianapolis get targeted a couple years ago. Just wanted to bring that to you guys' attention and see if you guys have heard of it. Thanks for taking my call again.
I have not heard of it, Pierre. In what specific incidents, what are they doing to them? Regulation or charging them with what?
Charging them with running pill mills and charging them, scrutinizing their their billing, and if you Google it, some of the cases will come up, but I know WAOK hit it hard on 2 shows and out of Atlanta, and Wilmer Leon did something on it on Sirius XM, the Urban View, and they're going after these individual practices. I believe they want to because the big pharmaceutical companies and the medical, the doctor, the hospital corporations want to put these guys, Black doctors, out of business. But I just wanted to bring it to you guys' attention. Maybe you guys can look into it. It might be an opportunity for somebody you may know, or maybe you guys.
Pierre, I just finished a case a couple of weeks ago out of LA, up in Northern California, where a young psychologist been working 20 years, an unblemished record, and they charged her with unemployment fraud, and that she writes reports about workers being injured and how it affects them psychologically when they have a broken leg or a broken limb or any kind of an injury from work. She does a psychological report, do 10 assessments, file the report. And the medical people she was working for was paying her, you won't believe this, a minimum amount of money, like $45 a report. She had nothing to do with the billing on that report afterwards. But anyway, they charged her with 37 counts, felonies for workman's comp fraud. And finally, after years and 9 months, with going through 5 different DAs and investigation and motions, we find that oftentimes the prosecutors are being led by the insurance companies. If they want funds from the insurance companies for support of their district attorney's office expenses, they have to file lawsuits. And they don't have a scrutiny of these reports that come to them the way they should before they ruin someone's life and charge them. Finally, we got before a judge, or were before a judge, who finally realized what was going on, that they didn't file charges against a Hispanic psychologist who was in the same position as this Black psychologist doing the same thing for the same period of time, over a 6-month period of time. They did reports together, and they didn't charge this Hispanic psychologist for some reason. The investigator was a Hispanic for the district attorneys, for the insurance company. And we find that sometimes the prosecuting agency is influenced by the desire of the insurance company to file charges against doctors because the DAs are getting paid by the insurance company. So they filed this bogus ass criminal case against this doctor who had to go through it for 3 years and 9 months before we finally got it dismissed a couple of weeks ago. The judge dismissed all charges before a preliminary hearing based upon the information that we were able to provide him through motions. So racism is rampant in law enforcement, in our profession.
Yeah,
Okay.
and she won't get her legal back either.
Yeah, it's terrible.
No.
Okay, well, thanks, Pierre. Let's go take one quick caller. Denise on the line. You have a question or comments for Denise? And thank you, Pierre, for your excellent question. Denise, you have a question or comment? Hello, did we lose her? Denise, can you hear me
How are
okay?
you?
I'm fine, Denise. You have a question or comment?
Distinguished gentlemen. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to comment on his comment about what's going on here with Indianapolis with the Black doctors. But what we have to remember is truth is always going to prevail. These Black doctors, in particularly, the white women have reported sexual misconduct. And it seems like to me that when Black men get in a certain field of education or profession, they choose to do things that are chargeable. For instance, both of them are being charged with a client, and in particular, just the white women were touched or touched inappropriately. So therefore, that brings on a lawsuit and a questioning and digging in the background of both of these professional men that's been in business for a long time. So I guess the moral of the story is for Black men who marry white women, all white women are not attracted to you. So do your job, stay in your professional lane, and take care of your family. That's my comment.
Well, thank you, Denise, for your comment. I can't respond to that. I don't know whether Attorney Banks can or not.
I think she said it all.
She says, what the call says, stay in your lanes, brother.
Well, I just will add to that we see so many examples of where brothers are staying in their lane, and they're still being subject throughout history. And even today, of course, the young lady in New York with the brother that was walking his dog, we see Black men being unjustly accused of these alleged interactions with white women.
Wow. Well, we got to save this for another day because we're just running out of time. I like to thank each and every one of our VIP guests, of course, that helps us with the tremendous show each week. Callers, I forgot to give our phone number. Next week, we'll be talking again, but write this number down, 833-653-3529. 833-653-3529. We will be tackling another set of legal issues of today next week. And one of the things that we think is important when there's election, make sure you register and vote. When you get a summons for jury duty, make sure you show up, because it's important that each of you participate in our system of justice and accountability. And at that point, goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Have a great day.
Have a great day, everybody.
So long.